So one of, if not the most important things that I'm concerned about is young people feeling suicidally depressed and the rate at which suicide is increasing among young people, and the complete absence of a serious conversation being had about this by almost all adults. Period. Like, there are cognitive scientists and psychologists, and there are people doing research on this, but I'm pretty sure these people are not affirming publicly that which would have to be affirmed, and that which I guarantee all of these young people who are struggling with depression are thinking, which is that it is fundamentally unjust to have been brought into this existence in the first place without consent and without an option for leaving or making the suffering stop that involves anything other than you dying. Right? This is, to anyone like me, philosophically obvious and undeniable. And I guarantee it's obvious and undeniable to every, almost every suicidally depressed young person. They understand what I'm saying, and all of the adults who are like, what? You're part of the problem. You're an abuser. Like, the fact that you don't understand means you are participating in abuse. Right? And we all are, just, again, by the sheer fact that we exist in this existence that is so fundamentally composed of abuse, or it depends on how you want to define this, but like at the cellular level, cells eat each other, and that's how they become multicellular organisms. Things eating other things. And at the level of cells, it doesn't appear to be particularly disturbing. Although it still is, to me, because I'm just that fucking depressed. Right? And anyone who is as depressed as me, or more, if they're not already dead, of course, understands what I mean. Like, when we think about cells eating other cells, it's a Lovecraftian cosmic horror thing. When the average biologist talks about it, they're just like, oh, so cells eating other cells proceed to eat more cells and develop into multicellular. They always talk like this on like PBS nature shows, like it's nothing. And then a lion eats a zebra that is screaming in pain, like it's nothing. And there you go. Like they have no moral convictions whatsoever. They're just like, organisms develop and become more complex over time. It's called the evolutionary process, and it involves the eventually the enslavement, rape, and torture of innocent victims, like children. Right? So we're gonna like have no moral conviction about that whatsoever on the biology show, and then we're gonna have a documentary about the Holocaust where we're very concerned. Now we're very concerned. It's like, no, if you're that kind of person who doesn't see doesn't recognize abuse at all levels of existence, then you don't recognize it at all. And your moral convictions regarding the Holocaust don't mean anything to me, because you're not going to do anything, newsflash, to stop genocide from occurring, are you? Including not having children in the first place, right? My philosophy can be boiled down very simply to this. Stop abusing children actively, meaning the children that exist, not abstract theoretical children, in other words, but the children that actually exist in the world. Stop abusing them during their formative years. Stop causing them childhood trauma. And you eliminate almost all of your problems. Stop having children, and you eliminate all of your problems. It is that simple. In theory. In practice, you're going to keep having children, and you're going to keep abusing them. And that's going to keep making everything worse and worse and worse until life on Earth is, humanly speaking, hell on Earth. Which, correct me if I'm wrong, It basically already is. Hello. Right? Like, again, like some people think that's not true. And those people are the problem. And having to be trapped with such people is what drives young people to feel suicidally depressed. Right? It's not that they got a D on their homework. Oh, I feel bad about myself because I got a D on my homework. No, it's you're being trapped in a system that is assigning you homework within a torture dungeon that you're forced to go to against your will because you were brought here without consent, knowingly, to, at a minimum, suffer and, as a guarantee, die. That's why you're sad. Right? And the clever children who figure out how to communicate in language quickly enough, and children are clever in all kinds of ways, so if you are not one of those children, doesn't matter, right? Like, I didn't speak when I was a child, and now I won't shut up, right? So I know both sides of this equation. In other words, that language it's some indication of mental activity. They're going to use the word intelligence. But again, my experience is that people who are quote-unquote intelligent don't use the word intelligence. People who are considered quote-unquote geniuses don't use the word genius. People who are considered quote-unquote smart don't use the word smart. Because all of these concepts are stupid and abusive and inaccurate, right? They don't mean anything substantial. So anyway, the point is, how can you actually help? That's what makes me depressed now as an adult, is the fact that I've survived long enough to see my own generation create another generation, which becomes a new level of horror, right? It's like, I thought it was bad when I was 10 years old, and I thought that it'll just get worse and worse if I keep living. And I was right. It is now far worse. Why? Because there are more people, in particular, children, who are, as they always have been, innocent, defenseless victims who, anyway. So I try to think of, how can I help? That's all that matters, is direct action. How can you actually help a young person? What can you say? In particular, if you are yourself still struggling with depression, still struggling with suicidal ideations, as they call it. Again, that is a euphemism, suicidal ideations. What we should be calling this is suicidal reasoning, because it is entirely logical, or at least it can be, right? And it undeniably is, in its most fundamental form, an entirely logical, entirely reasonable way to think. It is not what they will tell you, which is that, you've lost your mind, you're delusional. Someone who's suicidal is unhinged from reality. It's just comically not the case. Comically not the case at all. Right? So here's the best that I can come up with as far as advice for young people, and it's this. Think of life like waking up in a movie theater. You don't know how you even got there. You didn't even buy a ticket. Someone else bought a ticket, got you in. Right? As a child, you're often dragged to the movie theater against your will. If you're like me, you don't even want to see the movie. Right? Your parents want to see the movie, and if they abandon you too obviously, then they'll be held legally accountable until they're not. Right? Like in the past, that's all dependent on how abusive society just happens to be when you're born. Right? So it is worse now than it was when I was younger in so many ways, but it's been worse anyway, the point is, you wake up in a movie theater and you figure, well, you might as well watch the movie, like figure out what the movie even is. And it starts to occur to you very quickly that this movie sucks. This movie is very bad. This movie is very stupid. This movie may be disgusting. It may be horrifying. Right? It's all of these things. Right? It's not a movie that you want to watch. Right? So you have the obvious options here, which is, if you're an adult, right? You can just leave, which is, again, an entirely reasonable thing to do, isn't it? It's not like you've lost your mind. It's not like you've. Where did you get this idea that you shouldn't sit through a movie that you're not enjoying? Everyone has this idea. Everyone, hello, right? But you can also look around and see, like, are other people enjoying this? Shit, you know? And they are. That's the thing. That's part of why it's so depressing to be trapped in society, is you look around and you see people having a great time. And you think, how is that possible? Right? You're looking at this movie and you're like, this is the stupidest movie I've ever seen. And then you look at the people around you and they're like, having a great time. Because that's one of the ways to experience life, is that you just have a great time, more or less all the time. And Arthur Schopenhauer would call this a decoy, meaning like it's kind of just a lie that's told that ends up causing more suffering and is not at all representative, in other words, of the overall general experience. But anyway, the point is, say you can't leave, say you're a child and you're forced to stay. You can try to escape your parents and the security guards and everything and try to, but you know, you can't. You basically can't escape. You have to sit in this movie theater until the movie's over. So what do? Well, one of the things you can do, and this is the advice really that I'm giving, one of the things that you should do is be annoying to the people around you. A little bit. Right? I'm not suggesting violence. I'm not suggesting being hateful or angry. I'm suggesting being comically annoying, meaning play practical jokes. Throw some popcorn at the 17-year-old in the vest, because they ultimately don't have any control over this situation. And if you if they're like, hey, you need to stop that, and you're like, or what? Like, well, or we'll kick you out. You're like, well, I want to leave anyway. And you're like, well, you know, and then you throw more popcorn at their face, and you're like, and they're like, oh, we're going to bring in the security guards. And you're like, okay, I'll fart on them. And you're like, well, then we're going to bring in the police. And you're like, I'll show them my butt. Right? And you just that, it turns out that's something you can do. And then if you like jump over the seats and you're like, dip, 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 and you make chicken noises, and you go up to the screen and you make shadows, and you maybe flick a booger on a person or something. In other words, again, I'm not suggesting all-out anarchy, all-out violence, all-out madness. I'm suggesting a very specific thing, which is that you deserve, this is what I'm saying, you deserve to feel some relief if in fact the situation that you are in is that you are expected to just die. And correct me if I'm wrong, that is exactly the situation you're in. You are expected to suffer silently until you just fucking die. And when you say things like, you know what, I think I'm going to probably have to just kill myself to make this just stop. And everyone basically says, yeah, go ahead. We want you to. We want you to disappear, to make room for more obedient slaves, more functional slaves that will be more productive. Right? When you say that, and that's the response you get, you deserve now, and for the rest of your life, you deserve to be annoying. Because it's funny. You deserve to annoy people in a way that's funny. You deserve to kick the driver's seat of the car as your parents are driving. Right? Because it's fucking funny. Right? And if they drive off the road because they can't handle that, that's on them. That's on them. It's not on you. You're going to be told to take responsibility for your actions by the very people who refuse to take any responsibility for their actions whatsoever. You're going to be told by the most irresponsible people on earth to take responsibility for your actions. And the thing is, you're already taking more responsibility for the fact that you exist and for your actions than they have ever taken. The fact that you are thinking existentially, the fact that you are contemplating taking responsibility for your own death means that you are taking more responsibility than any of these idiot coward motherfuckers have ever taken or will ever take, ever. You deserve to be hilariously annoying forever. And I guarantee that is the best advice that you will ever get for depression. Because no therapist is going to tell you that, because they can't legally tell you that. And no psychiatrist, no counselor at school is going to tell you that, because they can't legally tell you that. And they're cowards who care more about the law. They care more about protecting themselves than helping you heal with suicidal depression. They're not going to tell you what I'm telling you, because they're fucking awful. In general, they're frightened, irresponsible, idiot cowards. And you're trapped with them, and that's going to make you, logically speaking, want to die faster. If you have to die already, you're going to want to die faster. Right? So the best way to sit through this movie without losing your fucking mind is to be as hilariously annoying as you possibly can be to all of the people who are seemingly having a great time. Because it's not fair. It's that simple. It's not fair to you that you should have to silently endure all of this fucking horrifying shit while everyone else smilingly, stupidly, cowardly just goes about having a good day. No, sorry. You get to not have such a great day now, because I'm going to flick a booger on you. Why? Because it's fucking hilarious. All right, one thing that I infamously did a year ago, I guess, is I ran naked down the street, going, and they were white people, and I said some dirty words. Let's just say, I didn't say it hatefully, but I said all of the things. I said, I could say whatever the fuck I want. Watch. Blip, 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 blip. I just said a bunch of words. And they all went, whoa! You know what they did? Exactly what they will do to you. They threatened to kill me. Like, I'm going to kill you! And I'm like, of course you are. That's hilarious. I kept saying that, like, this is a joke, and this is hilarious. And you don't get it. And you probably will never get the joke. But I get it, and I deserve to laugh. I deserve to laugh. And I that's what I said, and I was right. And I'm just going to tell you exactly what I told myself. Because it helped me not die. And find ways to still be alive. And try to find ways to be of service to other people. And this is one of the ways that I'm trying to be of service. Because what is more important than trying to help suicidal young people? Nothing. Right? Nothing is more important than this. Because it's just going to get worse, right? And no one is going to tell you this, apparently, other than other people who understand, who haven't already killed themselves. Which is anyone like me, right? And I know I'm not alone. There are other people like me out there in the world, but we are a minority, right? We are a minority, and we are usually censored by society. So you have to dig around. You have to pay a lot of attention to the fine details of humanity to find anyone who actually gets the joke. Right? I'm not saying that I get the joke. Right? This again, people are going to say you're pretentious. They're going to say you're arrogant. They're going to say you think you're better than everyone. But the thing is, with regards to existential philosophy, you are. Not with regards to shooting, basketball hoops. Not with regards to being a mathematical genius. You're not, potentially, unless you are. It's like there's one sense in which you are technically better than everyone else, and that is the existential awareness thing. You're just more aware. You just pay more attention. and you just experience more of the consequential suffering. So if that makes you better, then you are, right? But it doesn't. It doesn't make you better in any other sense. It doesn't mean you're strong physically. It doesn't mean you're strong mentally necessarily. Although you probably, if you keep thinking this way, you are developing a kind of mental strength, which is very real and will be very useful in circumstances that other people cannot handle because they're too fucking stupid and cowardly and dumb, right? So Hunter, or not, what was his name? Hugh Thompson. I always think of Hunter Thompson, but I think it's Hugh Thompson. Was the person who stopped the My Lai massacre many years ago now, in the 60s, in the Vietnam War. There was a typical psychopath who did the typical psychopath thing, which is, hey, I have a gun, and there's a bunch of innocent victims, and I'm just going to kill them, because who's going to stop me? Who's going to stop me? That's what they all say. All of the psychopaths of the world today, what are they saying? Who's going to stop me? The only person who would stop them is someone who just happens to be in the right place at the right time. So, like, Harriet Tubman's going to stop you. Because she just happens to be there at the right place at the right time with the right equipment, mentally, physically. She's going to fucking stop you. She's not going to solve the problem of slavery, not by a long shot. But she's going to stop, like, potentially you from enslaving this specific person for any longer. Right? And so this man got in a helicopter and intervened into the genocide, into the massacre. Again, genocide, massacre, murder, abuse, like, who cares about what these terms mean? There's abuse, and then there's healing. And they're both a spectrum, obviously. So be that person, basically, right? To the best of your ability. Like, be prepared for things to go exactly as badly as you hope they won't. And then be prepared when they do go that badly to be the only person with the presence of mind to simply do what must be done. And then be prepared to not be able to do enough, because it's never enough. Right? But you will, best case scenario, you will prevent potentially hundreds of people from being murdered. Right? Is that not worth it? It's worth it. It's absolutely worth it. And as much traumatic suffering as Hugh Thompson, I think is his name, endured, and it's a lot. Like, he suffered horrible abuse because the military, rather than reward his behavior, abused him for decades. And his wife left him because he's a traitor to the nation for being one of the most heroic people ever. You know, he got nothing but further abuse. But you know what he did? He eventually went back to Vietnam, and he met all the people, or their descendants, that he was able to save. And I guarantee that he felt like, yeah, worth it. Fucking worth it, right? So you deserve to be annoying, is the best advice for any child being told to just get over being suicidally depressed. You're not going to ever get over it. But I guarantee it's not just about developing a sense of humor. It's about developing the most intense form and defiant form of sense of humor that you possibly can. Because you deserve it, and it will be useful, and it will be worth it. It will prove to be worth it. Because it's going to help you die in a way that's more dignified than hanging yourself in a closet. Because they told you to. Because they told you that's all you get. Because they won't take responsibility. And you don't feel like you have any other option because no one's telling you. Good luck.